It's time to get into a section of the course that people tend to find a bit tricky and off-putting, and quite a lot of 3D artists will try and avoid it altogether or kind of use hacky approaches, and that is the matter of UV unwrapping our model, which, especially if you want to work on game assets and you want to look at baking normal maps and textures, absolutely essential. And it can be difficult at first. There's a lot of things in Blender that make it seem less intuitive than it is, but I actually find it a really relaxing and satisfying process once you get into it. And a car is quite a good one to learn on because it's naturally got body panels, it's got shapes that kind of make sense for wrapping, like you can physically wrap a car, so it does lend itself to a tutorial on this subject, and the best way is to just dive into it and explain what I'm talking about. So what we have at the moment is our model, and if we bring up the UV tab in Blender and then select all the faces with the A key, you'll see that at the moment there's nothing going on. If I then choose UV unwrap angle based, we get this. So what Blender is trying to do is it's trying to take the whole 3D model and flatten it down onto a piece of paper, because your texture has to be 2D. If you think about it, that makes complete sense. So it's like wrapping a present. You can't just, if you were physically going to try and wrap a car in a single sheet of wrapping paper, maybe a toy car, you wouldn't just be able to take that sheet, push it on top and have it perfectly conform to the shape. So what we have to do is to tell Blender where we want to start breaking up our model so that it can lay everything out neatly onto this space. So a couple of things to bear in mind at the moment. We have a mirror modifier applied, so at the moment we're only seeing half the model, and that's not a problem because there's no point in doing the work twice. Our car is completely symmetrical, so we're going to help it understand how to unwrap and then apply our modifier afterwards. So the way to make things easier with Blender and unwrapping is to take advantage of the edge seam mark. So remember that we put these creases in, so we can do the same thing and put in edge cuts. I'll explain as we go, but to just make things easier we need to turn off our creases overlay, sorry, our sharp overlay. So if you click on this button here, which is our mesh edit overlays, and we'll turn off sharp, because we're often going to put them in the same place so things can get confusing. So let's start by marking the panels that are actually our car panels. Cars are divided into these panels for a reason, so the logical edge to do would be this one. So we're just going to work our way down, just shift clicking as we go, and you might want to rotate the view so you can see. I'm going to right click and we're going to choose mark seam. Let's just turn off X-ray for a second and look at what's going on here. So we're just going to turn it on again to get this edge. So we've got that selected, and let's select these edges to start with. So we just need to make a start on this, and then we can rough in the first shape, and if we don't like it we can change it, so we're all good. Okay, so we're going to right click and mark seam, and then if I hit the A key, select everything, and then hit U to unwrap and use angle based, you can now see we've got this bonnet section cut out. Sorry, I just paused a second, I was trying to remember what the American phrase is. It's a hood, but we're making a European car, so I'm afraid we're going to call it a bonnet. So just to illustrate further what we're doing, I'm going to apply texture to this. Now we do already have a car paint texture. I'm going to make a new, I'm going to X that off and then make a new material. I'm going to call it UV checker. And I'm going to click on this little circle and we're going to choose image texture, and then we're going to click new, and down here at the bottom you can choose UV grid and color grid. Now you would think it would make sense to choose UV grid. We are going to use that later, but for now I'm going to choose color grid. I'm going to set this to 4096 so it's a nice high resolution image, and we'll just call this UV checker grid, and then hit new image. And what you can see now is we've got our wrapping paper, and if I just move over to if I move over to the UV window and push this button here and choose UV checker grid, we'll need to go back to editing our model, you can see our UV map is overlaid over our image. If I hover over here and then hit the L key to select linked, I can move this, and as I move the image using the G key, as I move the UVs, you'll see that the bonnet updates. I don't want to worry too much about this at the moment, but remember that it's mirrored, so we're getting a mirror down the middle, but that's fine for now. And you can see that for the most part, it's a tiny bit of stretching there, but for the most part we've got a nice straight UV grid. So we're off to a good start. Because we're going to use auto unwrapping, things might move about a bit as we go, but eventually we will kind of lock things into place. So let's think about the next sensible part of the car to break off, and that would be this front wing. So we know this is the door panel running down, so let's mark that edge, Control Shift down there, right click and mark seam, and we're just going to mark these edges as well. Something else that I like to do to make my life easier is to separate out the materials as we're working. So what we can do is, we know that this is applied to everything that's going to have the car paint on it. So if I hit tab and then hit select, and we're going to hit P, separate selection. I could have done that by material, but I'm old school, I'm doing it the old way. Just for now, we're going to rename this section car paint mesh. And then we can use the backslash key to just view this. So it makes it a lot easier to see our edges and our lines. And now, if we select this face and then hit the L key, we can choose select link, and I've got it set to seam, so it will only select up to those edges. So it didn't select the bonnet. And we can now hit U to unwrap, angle based unwrap, and this illustrates the next thing that I want to look at. So I'm just going to move this over here with the G key. So why are these squares tiny and these are big chunky squares? And the reason for that is that Blender is telling this object to take up as much space as it can. If I hit the A key to see everything, we can now use the L key to select each of these sections. So I need to click off. So if I scale this up, you can see that the squares get smaller. Now, we're going to use auto unwrap for now. So actually, if I hit everything and hit U, choose unwrap angle based, Blender's going to pack it as best it can, and you can see our model's already starting to get a bit easier to understand. I'm actually going to turn this grid off for now because I find it's easier to see my mesh without. So Blender is starting to unpack, but we've still got quite a lot of stretching going on. You can see here things look a bit weird. They definitely look weird on the roof. Okay, so let's do this panel here. I think is pretty much good to go. I don't think it needs anything doing, so we can ignore that one. This one, let's carry on marking where our door would go, and it'll really make sense why we do this when we lay out the final UV maps. So we're going to mark this seam, and I think we've got some slightly broken geometry in here, which hopefully you don't have, but it doesn't matter because we know that's covered by the protective strip anyway. So we're just going to cut this seam out, and we'll worry about this one later. But you'll see what happens when we unwrap everything. So we're going to mark that seam. And then we're going to select everything with the A key and hit U to unwrap. And something I like to do at this point as well is to just increase my margin a bit, because you can see that things are touching and I really don't want them touching. There's many good reasons for that, but in part it just makes it a lot easier to see what's going on. So we'll bump up our margin to, here we'll do 0.5. There's a bit of space between everything for now. So again, so this door looks okay, but there's some traps to watch out for here. Can you see things look a little bit sort of crazy here? And that's because it's trying to work out what to do with this shape, which it can't really smooth out. So we're going to solve that problem by separating it out completely. So select those four edges and choose mark seam, and then we're just going to repeat the process, A, U, and now our door looks much better. This is still not right though, because think about how you would dismantle a box, and the easiest way to do that is to put cuts into each of these corners so it can sit properly flat. So I'll select these 4 edges, right click and choose Mark Seam, and then we'll just repeat the process again. And now that's much flatter. Okay, so we've got a good chunk of the car unwrapped already. Let's do... I think most of this panel can stay the same, and I think it would make sense to cut this boot section out. So we will Mark Seam. I warn you in advance, the big body work always goes faster than all the other parts that follow it, but we've got a lot of fiddly little details, but once you got into a rhythm with it, it gets a lot easier. So we've marked that seam, and I think this whole section can probably unwrap. The only thing to watch out for is these. So we're going to cut all the way through, because again, Blender just can't flatten that object, it will pinch. So solve your problem, make your life easier by cutting them out. We can always add things back in again. And I also like to put in cuts here like this to break it out, so otherwise you're going to end up with one long, essentially piece of paper. So we can break that into 2, and that will make it a lot easier to lay out our grids later on. So we're just going to keep working on these. And then I'm going to hit A to select everything. And okay, we are making some progress now, so that's looking pretty good. There's a little bit of stretching here. We'll see if we can do anything about that as we carry on. But for the most part, it's pretty good. That might just be a case of moving some geometry about to smooth that, so we'll tackle that in a bit. Any other bits that look like a problem? These could be an issue, so let's cut that out. So I'm going to mark that seam. I think we're okay. Okay, let's have a look at the back bumper. So this part's going to be a little bit tricky. Also, I've just realised that if I bring up my reference, this part of the bumper here should actually be plastic. So let's fix that now whilst we can. I mean, we can always fix things, that's the beauty of 3D. It's already starting to look pretty cool. I just find it really satisfying to see all the grid squares laid out neatly and not distorted. So let's go to edit this face, and maybe the best bet is to go back into solo mode with the shift key, with the backslash key, sorry. I've just realised I haven't got screencast keys on, so let's turn that on. So if we flip the view to the side, and then let's just slide these up so this edge becomes straight. And then we're going to select these edges and hit the P key to separate that selection. And then we'll go back into our full mode with the backslash key and select these two, hit Control and J to join, and then we're just going to need to merge these vertices back together again, because if I move this you'll see it's not connected. So I hit A for it to select everything, M, merge by distance, make sure it's set to a super low amount, and it looks like 6 vertices have merged, which is the amount we've got there. So all that's left to do now is to, I'm pretty sure there's a face behind that number plate, so make sure we get that. And then we'll just assign our car plastic material. Okay, cool. So we're back into editing the sections that we need. So I think the best approach to here is to take it nice and slow, and maybe we can attach some bits back on as we go. So let's just start by cutting these edges. And let's see if we can just flatten out this part first. Okay, I'm just going to hide my reference, don't need that for now. Hit A to select everything, U, angle base. So let's try and work out what we've just unwrapped here. I think it's this part here. So I think for the most part we're pretty good. So let's reconnect that edge to start with. So we will clear seam and we'll put a cut in here. It's going to be under the car, so it doesn't matter quite so much about the flow. So we're just going to repeat the same process. And you can see it's added that part in. And this part is not connected to anything apart from this bottom part, but I think that works. I'm just checking where we're coming unstuck here. This is the bottom part. Everything kind of looks good. Let's just see if we could maybe connect this edge so it doesn't get completely separated. So we'll clear seam there, hit A, selects everything, and we're looking good. You just want to make sure there's nothing overlaying any part. Okay, I think that's going to work for what we're doing at the moment. Things will look a little bit weird until we mirror everything, but we'll apply our mirror modifier, but we're making some good progress. So where have we got left to unwrap? The front bumper, we've done the side. Okay, I've seen something that we need to fix here as well. We need to do the same trick here. This is why this side part is not unwrapping properly. So, like everything in Blender, and especially in my tutorials, lots of trial and error to get to where we need to be. I'm going to put cuts in here and here. I'm hoping that this should fix some of the stretching that we're seeing down here. Hit A, and then angle base. Yeah, that's sitting much better now. And you can see these parts are straight. Perfect. Okay, so we've just got the front bumper on this section to do. So we're going to use the same approach. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to immediately mark this out because it won't be able to cut that out. And we're going to use the same trick here. So that doesn't need to be cut, but these edges do. You can see there's some crazy warping going on there. And then we'll do the same thing here. And also we need to be smart about how this is going to attach. So let's try putting a cut in here. So it's only, we'll turn that one off again, so it's only joined in one place, the flattest point. Okay, and then we're going to do a similar trick here, but I think we'll join on this bottom part here. So let's just mark. Oh. And I'm just doing this so basically the parts don't get too lost. So let's hit A to unwrap. So we should be dealing with this section here at the moment. Let's see how this unwraps now. Oh. U, angle base. And we're looking pretty good, I think. Just trying to see if there's any obvious stretching. This part looks a bit weird at the moment. I've obviously not put in, I didn't mark my cut lines in there, I must have hit the wrong key, so I'll just put those back in again. Mark seam, maybe I'll mark them sharp, and angle base, and that's looking better, you can see that's looking better now. Okay, I think we're pretty good. So I think we're at the point where we could apply the mirror modifier. We're going to hit A, choose angle based, and now you'll see we've got this nice big section, nice and flat, that maps out the rest of the car. What I like to do at this point is to start putting our car back together again, so that the layout makes more sense. And again, you'll kind of see why as we go. But so So let's choose L and move it over to here. So we're just going to assemble our car away from this area so we've got space. So this is the bonnet. So let's put that kind of logically where it should be. And we're going to find that there's some weird bits along the way, and there's maybe some more fixing to do, but this is the back part, so we can run that pretty close. And you'll see that for the most part they match up. Something to keep an eye on is you'll see that our numbers and our grid don't actually match up, and it's possible that we have got this the wrong way around. Let's try flipping it. UV mirror on the y-axis. Yep, I think we were right before. It's just because that's where our grid lines end. If we were to move it over that, yeah. Okay, my fault. Really important to make sure that you're not overlapping UVs, because there can only be a certain amount of information. So really important to make sure you're not overlapping UVs, and the reason for that is that if you've got a pattern here or you've baked in a normal map, both of these faces will try and load the same information. So you can see it here and you're going to end up with some crazy stuff. So every UV has to occupy its own space, unless, and we'll come to that in the wheels, you want to repeat the same information. Okay, so this is where the pattern's going to become particularly useful. We'll hit L. At the moment we don't know which side we've got selected, so we're going to move this one. So that's this side. So we're going to move this, rotate it -90 and position it under here. And there'll be a little bit of a gap. Have we got this the wrong way around? We have. We know we've got this the wrong way around. Oh, actually it's a little bit early to tell because we haven't put our door into place. So let's put the door in and then we'll work it out. So which door have I got? That's the right door. So we're going to rotate it -90. No, we're going to rotate it 90. There we go. And let's put this into place. And we might need to just kind of manually scale a little bit. It's never going to be perfect because of the techniques that we're using to. I'm just going to hold on the shift key. So don't worry about there being a little gap in there. Okay, so now looking at this, that's flowing the right way. So we're just going to hit the L key and kind of get this roughly into place. So it'd be somewhere like this. Because remember there's a bit of plastic trim there. And let's repeat on the other side. So rotate. And never type the right way. Never get it the right way around. You'd think I'd know clockwise and anti-clockwise by this point. Okay, this is close enough to work on, I think. Maybe we'll just pull this down a little bit. And let's grab the same one. So I don't know if you know, it's a good chance you're into cars if you're doing this tutorial, and you might be somebody who plays racing games, but if you've ever downloaded templates for things like iRacing and Project Cars and Assetto Corsa, it's the same. They look like this. They tend to be laid out in this logical way. So if you are developing a game and you want modders, you know, this is a useful way to make it coherent for them. Okay, so now we've got the wings to do, so let's select this one. And that is the, I've got confused again. That is this side. Is it this side? Let's rotate it 90 degrees. Have we got our doors the wrong way around? Nope. Okay, everything's correct. So let's just try and work out where these fit. And again, we might not have perfect space to put them in. That's kind of close enough. And in fact, these might need to come up like this. something like that, just so we're filling in the front kind of accurately. And then this is our other wing. Yeah, I got it the right way around. Let's position that here. And then we're just going to use the L key to select all three of these. So that's actually sitting like that. Okay, but everything's kind of flowing. We've got a pretty satisfying looking grid. Let's bring in our front bumper, which I think is this one. So we're just going to check we've got these going the right way round, because when I made mine earlier I put it the wrong orientation, but I'm pretty sure that's right. Lights at the top, but we do have some, this is not actually unwrapped properly. You can see that this is kind of cut across, so my plan to join this has not worked. So we're just going to mark these seams, and remember now we've unwrapped, we've applied the mirror, so we have to do both sides. And then we're going to hover over this section. We're not going to do a whole unwrap again because we don't want to lose the work we've done. So we'll hit L over this section and then hit U to unwrap. And it's going to go and unwrap the whole section and fill that area. And you can see that we've actually got some problems now. It's a good job that we're tackling these now while we can. Because we've now applied the mirror, there's no break in these sections, which can lead to some kind of slightly weird shapes. So we're just going to cut both of these ends, and we'll do the same here. And then let's hover over here and hit the L key again, and we're going to select all of these parts. Okay, that should be everything. Let's see how we get on now. So we're going to hit U to unwrap angle base, and there we go, we've got no weird stretching. Let's just select all of this, move it off the grid for now, and then you'll notice that everything else has disappeared, so it's only showing the sections that we've got highlighted. So if we hit A to see everything again. Okay, so let's just take this whole section for now, and let's pick up all of these. I mean, once I get back into it, I can understand why people really don't like doing UV mapping, but so we need to bring this down so it's kind of the right size. Actually, as we do that, it would be a good idea to do that to everything. We don't have to be super accurate with the scaling, but so that would be something like this. And then we know that this part goes on the top, but we don't really have anywhere to fit that in, so now it's a case of finding spaces for everything. And we know these sections are these inner bits, so we'll and we want to try and pack everything in as tightly as we can without overlapping anywhere, because we're going to make some decisions in a bit about how tightly we want to lay this grid out. So at the moment, oh, we're clear, we're good. And then let's just make sure we've got the right side of each. So that is this offside, so we're just going to put that here. It's kind of a logical place for it, and there. Okay, front bumper section unwrapped. So what have we got left? We've got this rear bumper, which I think is all kind of neatly unwrapped for us. And are we orientated the right way? We are. Great. This section is looking good. That's this inner boot part. So let's rotate it and put it inside. This part part here, so it kind of makes sense. And let's see what we've got left here. So we're going to have another problem with I think we can leave that because we've got our rubber trim, so I'm not going to worry about what's going on with these faces. And we've cut that section out, so yeah, we're all good with that. Let's find our door handles. So that would be this one and this one. So that is our offside one. Let's just put it in this space for now, and we're just going to check that it's facing the right way. It's a little bit hard to tell because it's, but yeah, we've got the right orientation there. We'll do the same with this one, and let's just put them here for now. Same test. Yep, facing the right way. Perfect. Okay, so what are all these weird little bits we've got left, eh? Now, it can be a bit tricky to work these things out, and there is a couple of ways we can do it. If we click this button here, choose UV sync selection, everything comes back, and we can now see that these are this part here. So let's pull these down here, and what about these ones? So these are these, and these. Okay, so I'm guessing that these. Let's try and get at least the same side group together. So there's that one, and that one. It's like a crazy memory game. This one goes with this one. This one goes with this one. This one goes over here. This one goes over here. This one goes over here. And this one goes over here. And now we can kind of group these two together. Let's rotate it 180 degrees. You can kind of see. Oh, we were actually right before. So we'll just pick these up. I think I'm worried about nothing here. So let's move this one. It's such a tiny part of the mesh. Let's be consistent. So we'll rotate this 180, and we'll do the same with this. Nope. Okay, and then we're just going to select this side and pull this. Let's go into that space on the window for now. So remember, we're trying to make this fit back into this space, and we've almost made ourselves enough space to work with. So now we've got this section here. Let's try and work out what that is. That's the inside of this frame. I probably could have broken it into some more sections, but it's completely covered, so we're not going to worry about it. Let's just pull this down here, and that's going to be the corresponding side. And then this is likely to be, I actually don't know. We should have a front bonnet section, but it doesn't seem to be that. Hello, what do you belong to? Select everything. Maybe if we go into X-ray mode. Okay, it's the inside window arch from the offside. So again, we're gonna set and forget, because I don't think that is that important. So is that this side's one? Yeah. And that is also this side's one. These are literally covered up, so we don't need to worry about them, but we've unwrapped them, we've got them. You might need them for your project, so I like to be complete. And then that just leaves us this, which is the inside lip of the windscreen. Again, you're not going to see it, but let's put it into place. And I think we need to rotate it 180 degrees. Everything looks good. Oops. Back into tweak mode. Do I need to rotate it 180 or was it right before? Something like that. Okay, so we have now unwrapped the bodywork and we're just going to select everything with the A key and pull it back in, and now we want to scale it up as much as we can. Now we could optimize the space more by, if we were to put these in separate sections, we could make things bigger, but I don't want to do that, and there's a few reasons why. Mainly I'm going to try and keep everything on one UV map, and we'll look at a couple of different ways why you'd want to do that, why you wouldn't want to do that. But I'm working on a game asset with this, so I want as fewer texture maps as possible. So I think this is a good point to save. And we will tackle the next part, which is cutting out our plastic parts and doing the same job. Okay, so where are we? Let's start tackling some of these body parts, and we're going to find that we've missed some bits as well. So this was a separate object, so we didn't break out the body coloured panels for that, but we can do that as we go. So let's now select the body shell, and I'm just seeing that's car paint mesh, that's great. Okay, let's select this first body shell and we'll solo it, and I think we've got, this might not be the case for you. I've got some bits on here joined that shouldn't be, so I'm just going to use the L key to select these parts, my headlight inners, and I hit P to separate by selection. I'm just going to name those before I forget. We'll need those later on. And we're just going to solo this part again. Okay, so we should now be dealing with all of the plastic parts. We're going to have to make some decisions along the way about how much space we want things to take up. So this chassis at the bottom, although it's a huge part of the car, unless something's gone very wrong in your game or your render, you're probably not going to see it that much. So likewise these parts. So let's first take our car plastic and apply UV checker to it, and I'm actually just going to duplicate that material and go into my shading tab, and what I want to do is, because you can see at the moment can't separate the materials, this is an unnecessary step really, but I'm going to hit Shift and A and search for curve. Get curve, so get RGB curves. I'm going to drop that in the middle. I'm just going to pull this down to make it darker, so we can have our plastic but with the UV checker on it. So we're not going to use that for any final stuff, but it's just helpful to see. So let's go back to our UV tab, and you should be starting to be aware of the process now. So we're going to look for some obvious bits that we can separate out. So let's start by separating this edge. Right click and mark seam, and likewise this edge. Mark seam. And remember we've got our mirror modifier on again at the moment, so if I hit L, whereas internal R marks the seam again. Nope, we're still joined up somewhere. So we're joined up here. Going to make this a bit bigger so we've got more space to work on for now, and we're joined up in these spots too, so we're just seeing where we've got unbroken edges. This one is kind of floating at the moment, it should be joined up. We'll look at what needs to happen with that later on. So have we still got some connected edge? Yeah, we've got this front one, so turn off X-ray to help us as well. This is what I mean about the puzzle side. It's like you're constantly solving a puzzle, and I wouldn't say that this is better than a computer game, but I definitely spend more time doing this than playing computer games. Okay, so for now we're just going to hit U and unwrap, and we'll just move this out of the way. So that's that part taken care of. And now we're going to think about again how the real car is divided. So this section here, let's put a cut in there. And I think maybe here as well. So we'll mark this edge, and then this part would be the inner wheel well, and that's going to be its own separate bit. So let's see if we can separate this one out. So we're still joined here, so we just need to put that edge in there, mark seam, then hit L, okay, and then we're just going to unwrap this one as well. Okay, so we can probably pick up this one. This should unwrap nicely. Due to unwrap, angle base. Let's just drag this down here for now. All of our squares are different sizes, but we're going to pack everything in neatly at the end. Okay, so let's have a look at this one. So this part here is potentially going to be a problem. So let's just cut this part out. Okay, mark seam. And I think everything else should unwrap okay. Let's try it. No, we're still connected at this end, obviously. So we're going to think about where that body panel will join up, and this looks like a logical breakpoint. Or we could break it here. What happens if maybe we'll break it here. I think that should unwrap pretty nicely. So we'll mark that seam. We'll hit L, yeah, we've just got that part selected. U, angle base. Yeah, it looks like we're pretty good. And let's mark this seam here. So separating out our wheel well, and we're going to do the same thing. L, U to unwrap. Just pull this down here for now. And this part we need to separate the back bumper. I think this looks like quite a good spot. Okay, so on this part we need to separate this whole section out. And then yeah, that should be good. So if you select this one, I think that will unwrap okay. So you're just breaking it into manageable chunks and parts that make sense. Now how are we going to do this one? This will unwrap if we put a cut through there. So we'll just mark that seam. And then we'll hit L. And there you go, that's unwrapped nicely. So we'll just pull this down here. Let's not worry about the fact that all of our squares are different sizes. Okay, so let's tackle the front bumper now. Making some nice fast progress on this. Obviously you don't have to follow my approach, this is just the one that makes sense for me. This is the logic I try and use. So let's mark that seam like that. And then we should be able to select this one. We could actually unwrap both of these at the same time. We'll just keep those together. It looks like it flows pretty nicely. The reason that this looks strange is because it's curved, it's having to rotate slightly on the grid, but I don't think that's going to cause us any problems. Okay, so that's that front part done. What we forgot to do was separate this part out to its own material mesh, so we'll do that now, and we'll also name this UV plastic. So click off and then select everything that's got that material assigned. So the only thing that isn't selected is these blank plates, which is fine. So we'll separate by selection, and then we can rename this plastic trim parts, and then we can solve it. Okay, so let's do this shape, which is a little bit more tricky. So with objects like this, the best bet is to separate out each of these parts. So we'll mark that seam, and then think of this like a box. You're going to have points that it can unfold, so we'll go with those. And then this is going to be basically the same thing. It's a weird shaped box, but it's still a box. So I would put a cut in here, and a cut in here, and one down here. That might work. Let's try it. So hit 3. Let's go select that one, and we can unwrap. And we're just checking to make sure there's no faces overlapping anywhere, which there isn't, so job done. And now we've got this one in the middle to do. That doesn't need any cuts, I don't think. Let's find out. So I hit L and then U to unwrap. Yeah, all good. So we've just got left this shape here, and again, just think of it like a box, so we're going to need cuts. I think a cut there will be the best bet. Let's try it. Let's see how it looks. There might still be a bit of stretching. So you have to make a decision now about how worried you are about this part, bearing in mind that it's sinking into the shell. So we could put in a cut on each of these parts, and that will ease the stretching on that part. I personally wouldn't bother, I don't think, because it's so small and it's hidden by the bodywork. But let's unwrap again, and you can see it's a little bit hard to zoom in to the right amount, but you can see the stretching's gone, but the join isn't as good. So entirely up to you what you want to do there. I think I'm going to undo it. Oops. Okay, so we're going to select both of these, the L key, move them out of the way, and we should just have one bit of geometry left. Which is, what have we got here? So these were going to be the inside panels of here. So what we could do is put a cut in here. I'm just going to zoom in. I might have to use my manual zoom rather than my mouse wheel. So put a cut in here and do the same here. I think I want to do that. No, maybe you don't need to put one in there. Okay. And then I could potentially remove this cut now. And let's try selecting this again. And we're just going to see if there's any like weird stretching or overlapping, but I think, yeah, I think we're good. So this is what I mean about how you can keep tweaking and refining to get the best, because ultimately you want the fewest amount of pieces, but you don't want any overlapping parts when you unwrap. So we could maybe do the same thing here now. Let's clear that seam. So we're just going to check to see there's no... Yeah, we're all good. So that just leaves us this piece. And that is... I think we're going to do a very similar trick here, so... Yep. Now the problem that we've got here is that they are one object. So let's just try, we might need to undo this. Let's mark our seam here. I think this is where we're going to get some overlapping, so, but you don't know until you try. So select all of that, and then we can uncheck this edge. And clear the seam. So yeah, this is what we're good everywhere apart from here. We maybe are getting away with it, you know. So there's not actually any overlapping UVs, which is what I was worried about. I think again, because this is recessed and hidden, I think I'm going to go with that. I think we're good. Great. So let's select all of this. And actually, before we go any further, let's just check see if there's anything else to add in. So there's other elements that we haven't included. Do I want to add them in now? I think I probably need to do them. So just working out what's the easiest way to do this. Let's take these and apply the mirror and unpack them. So we'll apply the mirror, select everything, hit UV, unpack angle based. And you can see now everything is in proportion to the size of the object. It's a good idea also to just apply the scale of any objects before you unwrap. So let's just do that, see if it makes any difference. Yeah, so you can see that now it's brought all of our squares. So in case you didn't see what I did there, it's Control and A, apply scale, and then unwrap. Cool. Okay, what I want to do is select all of these and pull them up to the top. The reason we're doing that, I'll just show you now, is that if you select multiple objects, you will see both of their UVs, and eventually I want to pack all of these into the same space, but I just want to make sure it's pulled way out of the way. And then we'll do a bit of a, let's work through these by hand, I think, one at a time. So I'll select this object, and we'll change our plastic to UV plastic. So we haven't unwrapped anything yet, we're not going to see what's going on. Okay, this is another tricky shape. So the first thing we're going to do is, we absolutely can't have this joined on, so we'll mark that seam. And let's think about where this would unwrap to. So we might have to start cutting some faces and then remove them. So let's mark this seam. I'm going to leave this joined, so it would fold out there. And let's cut that seam there and do the same on the bottom. And then I find the trick at this point. I think we're going to want to cut in here and a cut in there. And let's hit A and hit U. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. But the only part that isn't working at the moment is we need to cut this section out here. So you can see things get all smushy in there. So I'm going to mark that seam. And yeah, I think we'll go with that. And we're not going to worry about this part just yet, so let's unwrap again. So there we go, so that's unwrapped. And this section here has actually got the glass on it, so we don't need to worry too much about that. I think that's pretty passable. It's such a small inside edge, you're not going to see it. So how do we tackle this bit? Well, what we need to do is put a seam that runs along, ideally the bottom because it's hidden, and mark that seam so that it knows where to start and finish unwrapping. And if we do it again, we should find we've got a pretty decent unwrap. It's not perfectly square. We could fix that if we wanted to, but you know, look at the size of the squares and the accuracy of it. I think we're pretty good. So I'm just going to select all of this, I'm just going to scale it down, and we'll just pull it off to the side for now. Actually, what we need to do before we go any further is to apply that mirror and unwrap again. That's silly of me. And then we'll scale it all down because we've got two of them. Okay, nice. Let's do this front grille. So at this point we can just keep working our way around the car and working out what needs what. So these parts here, in fact, why are we doing this the hard way? We've already set up our material, so let's change this to UV checker. And I'm actually going to rename that car paint on the end so that we know which one's which. And then what we should be able to do is tab into edit mode and then select those faces, so everything with the car paint on, and hit P. And then we're going to select everything with the plastic, and we're going to hit P again. And we're just going to change this to UV plastic. And then the emptiness, we're just going to separate that out. In fact, it's its own object, so we can join that back in again. We don't need to worry about UV unwrapping that yet. So let's tackle this one, and actually, I don't think there's anything to unwrap on it. I think if we hit A, choose UV angle based, we should be good. And the only thing to do is hit the mirror key, apply the mirror modifier, and there we go. So that's our top plate at the top. Now this should really be joined. Let's go back onto here. This should really be joined to this. So let's hit L to select that object, P to separate it, and then we're going to connect this to this with the J key. So I'll just undo that step. Select this face, then select this object and hit Control J, and we'll solo it to make sure it's joined. And you'll remember that we need to weld it on. So hit 1 to go into vertex mode, hit A to select everything, M to merge by distance, make sure it's at super low, 5 vertices gone. Now, it's a slight problem. This is the UV of the new object we created, and this is the existing bonnet, and they're completely different sizes and not connected. So we've got a few options here. I'm going to hit L. Let's see if I can make this work. I'm going to hit L, and then we're going to choose everything, change this to select box. I'm going to drag all the way around, and then I'm going to hit this. Nope, not that button. I'm going to hit pin. It's confusing, it's two different pins. And now I want to just select this one and unpin. And now I think if I select this object, I want to clear this seam. Hit A to select everything and hit U to unwrap angle base, and it's kept everything else in place, and it's just unwrapped our bonnet again. So we're going to need to select that and scale it down, and then we can bring it back into place. So that's a little something that would have been easier if we caught it at the start, but nothing is unfixable in Blender. We have to remember that we've pinned all of these, so let's just unpin it now. Okay, so we'll combine that. Let's combine that with our body shell. And we will link all of these and scale it down. And then let's work out which is left and right. So this is the right hand side. So let's move this to the right. This is the left hand side. Left hand side again. Oops, I moved that to the wrong side, didn't I? Always confusing. Okay, let's rotate this 20 degrees, so that makes sense. And this one, I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees. Oh, we're going to rotate this minus 90 degrees. And then we actually want to mirror this, I think. Okay, I've confused myself here. Let's just check these are flying in the right order. we're going to select these and we'll go UV, mirror on the y-axis, and let's just check that these are, so this is where your grid letters come in handy. So these are running the wrong way, as are these, so we need to mirror this on the x-axis, and now they say C8, C9, correct? And let's do the same on this side. Yeah, they're now reading the right way, and that makes sense because we've got the badge in the centre. We're talking absolute nonsense here. So these just need rotating through 108. Let's try again. So we're going to mirror on the x-axis. No. UV, mirror on the y-axis. There we go. Sorry, that took a few goes. I hope that wasn't too confusing. So basically we want the straight edge of both of those. So we're going to select both of these and bring them down. Rotate it 90 degrees. And then let's just put it in this space for now. And we might need to just bring our bumper and everything else down a little bit. So I'm just using the L key each time. Oops, I've already got that face selected. Let's just start again for ease. UVs can get very complicated and very sticky. And we'll just give everything a little bit of space and hopefully bring up the size a little bit. So again, this is where your grids are helpful. We're going to try and get these to about the same size as the letters above. So select these one more time. Position that in here like this, and then we can select everything. Make sure you're hovering on the right side, and we just need to make it all fit inside that space. Cool, not bad. That flow makes sense. That's good. Now, where were we? So we've got our wing mirrors unwrapped. Let's do some easy wins here. So we've got the door handle here. So we're just going to solo that. We don't want that face anyway, so let's get rid of that. And again, just treat it like a box. So we're going to need to mark the seam there. Mark the seam there. Same deal. And then we are going to mirror here and assign our UV plastic. Let's apply our mirror as well. UV angle based, and there we go, they're absolutely giant, but let's just pull these off to the side for now. Once the door handle's done, we've got this large panel at the back. I think I want to do a tiny little fix on here as well. So I'm just going to select these edges. You can see that they're perfectly on top of the other edges, which doesn't really work for us. So we're just going to move them in slightly. And let's just have a look at here. Let's just break off. Do we want to break off that edge, or should we break off this edge? Maybe we will. No, let's. This is going to be a bit of a tricky shape. So let's keep going down to the bottom. Mark seam. Mark seam. Okay, and then I think if we work our way down and just put cuts on each of these edges. Okay, so this shape looks pretty good, I think. Let's apply our UV. Yeah, nice. There's no stretching going on, that's all good. And then let's just work out what's going on with this shape. So I wonder again if we just we'll try breaking it there. So just on the tip of these triangles. So every time we're just looking for like the point that would release all the I guess the tension in the shape. So we're still joined somehow, somewhere, which we don't want. Let's just check we haven't got any. Oh, it's that edge there. So this is all good. This is an absolute mess at the moment, and I can't really work out why. We'll clear that seam. So this is going to split like that. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but it has unwrapped cleanly, so let's go with that. You're not going to see that part, so I'm not going to sweat it too much. Crazy rainbow 405, 205 now. Okay, we've got this shape at the top. Oh, before we go any further, let's apply the mirror. And let's just scale it down and pull it off to the side for now. Okay, what we've got left? Aerial, washer jets, windscreen wipers, lock. We're getting there. This little nubbin. Okay, let's just power through. Okay, let's do these first because they're going to be very easy. We don't have any bottom faces. So again, using the idea of treating it like a box, mark the seam. Let's apply our UV plastic. U to unwrap, nice, absolute giant. We'll apply the mirror. Scale them down a lot for now, pull them off to the side. So select these two. I think I might actually just join these together as well, there's no point in having them separate. So select both, Control and J. Check for any bottom faces. And then this is the same shape as before, so we can just mark those seams. This is actually just jutting out of the box so slightly, so we'll just pull it down in there. This isn't actually physically joined, so we don't need to worry about putting a cut there. We just need to put a cut down the entire length of this. And I think if we mark that seam and then just leave it clear one edge, let's see what happens if we unwrap it. Yeah, that's absolutely fine for something that small, although the end looks a little bit weird. Let's just try applying our scale. Oh, I guess that makes sense, yeah. Okay, so let's just apply our plastic checker. Nice. So, although there's a lot of parts and a lot of annoying steps, each one takes, less than a minute to do. So, it's the kind of thing that I like to put on a podcast, to put on some music and just get on with it. So, we're going to start by putting a cut from top to bottom like this. And then we're going to need to unwrap all of this. Let's clear that seam. And then we're going to need one here as well. And let's see what happens if we unwrap this. Do we definitely need a seam there? Let's just see what happens if we clear it. It's such a small part. Yeah, we can probably get away with that. So let's try and keep it to as few pieces as possible. Plastic UV. Yeah. We've only got one of these, so we don't need to mirror it. And we're just going to scale it right down. Pull it off to the side. Okay, I'm putting off the windscreen wipers. Oh, we've got this bit here to do. don't actually think there's anything to unwrap here because it's not joined on any sides. So plastic UV, supply the mirror, sweet. Still putting off the windscreen wipers. Not that they're difficult to do, really. We've just covered in a previous video how much I hate windscreen wipers. We've got a similar thing here. This part should be joined to here, so let's do those steps as well, and then we'll do the batch. So it's probably easy to apply the mirror at this point. Hit L, select the linked part, P to separate, and then so select this one first, then this one with the Shift key, Control and J to join, and then let's just, we probably don't need to mess about pinning parts, we should just be able to hit, oh, we need to merge together first, sorry. So hit A to select everything, and then merge by distance, and 5 removed, so that looks right. Hit L, and then we're just going to hit U to unwrap. We'll just scale it down a bit and bring it back to where we were. So that's that little problem fixed. So what's going on here? Just need to put in cuts on these 4 edges, and everything else should unwrap for us. Mark seam, and should delete all the other materials. UV plastic. Nice. We've got a little detail down there, a little hidden detail. We've also missed this as part of the bodywork, so we'll do that. Never ends. Now these faces aren't going to be seen, they're pushed into the geometry, so we'll get rid of those. And likewise these, and this will make our unwrap a lot easier. And we can now apply our mirror. And apply UV plastic. I'm just thinking about the headlights, so I've made these as separate objects. I think we might make a decision on that in the second part of the video, where they're going to go, whether that should be trim. I think it should be trim and not bodywork. I'll make a decision before we get to the end of the video. How's that? How's that for promise? So this should be joined with this bodywork, so we'll just hit Control and J. We made an array. So what we can do is we can clean this up and unwrap and then unpack afterwards, so that we only have to do this once. Now we don't need any of these faces because they're all pushed into the geometry or hidden, so we'll delete those, and you'll see that it's done it across. And we clearly made these a weird way because we've got a face in the centre, so we'll delete that and dissolve the edges, and suddenly we've only got 3 vertex to unwrap. So now hit A to select everything, U angle based, and we're going to remove all these other materials. Oh. Need to make sure I'm not in edit mode, and then we're going to change this to UV car paint. And then if we scale down, you see they all change, so that's great, except if we were designing a livery where these were different colours, we'd be stuck. So we need to apply our modifier, our array, and then if we now unwrap, we've got 5 different parts. Let's, just to make this easier, let's pull these to the side, select the lot, scale down, and we're going to pull that to the, do that all the time. You need to make sure you're hovering on the right side before you move. Let's tab out of edit mode, and then we're just going to select our bumper, join, and now let's just pull these and rotate, and I think I'm actually just going to tuck them into the side for there for now. Cool. Okay, let's do our wing mirrors. So let's join these all together first, and then tab into Edit. And they're not mirrored; they're two separate objects. So we can apply our UV checker paint. No, not paint, plastic. And what we're going to do here is it's going to be so small and so fiddly. We could probably delete these faces though. Let's just remove these because they're actually flat to the windscreen. Control Shift from one corner to the other, select like that. So we're going to use a technique where we select the sharp edges, and that should give us a good indication of where the cut should be. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Select, with our object selected, tab into Edit, make sure we've got the edge mode selected, and we're going to go to Select, Sharp Edges, and by default it's set to 30, which means that all of these edges are selected too on the cylinder, which I don't want. So we'll bump that up to 40, and then before we go any further, we're going to right click and choose Mark Seam, and it should now have broken these into sections that should unwrap pretty well. So let's see what happens if we hit A and use. So it's broken the windscreen wiper into a million pieces, but the unwrap actually looks pretty good, and we're unlikely to have a texture that needs to kind of flow neatly around this. So honestly, for this, I think we can call that windscreen wiper done. See how satisfying that looks. And what have we got left? We've got the lock at the back and this rear windscreen wiper. And then I think we can call it done for this part of the video. Oh, there's the fog lights too. Okay. They're all very easy. So let's just do the fog lights. So this has a car plastic. So we're just going to tab in to Edit, Select, and then we'll separate that out, because we don't have to worry about the other parts yet. And it's just a fancy box really, so let's try putting a cut in these parts. Nice. And let's just delete our other materials. Okay, rear windscreen wiper. Oh, let's join this on to our other elements so we don't lose it. And where's it gone? Oh, we need to apply our mirror. Always do that. Apply the mirror. Sorry. After a while of making a video, my attention isn't quite so good. And let's just make sure that we have selected both of these, because they're massive at the moment. And we need to unwrap them again, because we've now made two of them. And we'll just pull them off to the side like that. Okay, we're finally going to get to that back windscreen wiper, so select both of those, Control and J, and let's do the same trick. So select sharp edges, it's looking pretty good. Mark Seam, and hit A, select everything, angle based, and let's just apply our UV checker. Cool. That'll do for me. And this is our last bit of plastic. This also should be chrome, so let's assign that once we can. And then we'll just separate that out. We're going to join all of these things back together again. I just find it a lot easier to have them separated so I can see clearly what I'm working on and what I need to unwrap. So we've got no back faces. So let's try the sharp edges trick, see if that works again. So yeah, that kind of makes sense. I think I'm going to shift click off that. No, I'm going to do this by hand actually, because I'm confusing myself in here. So let's mark a seam there and a seam there. And let's separate this part out. No, let's separate this part out. And likewise this one for now. What's the betting this is going to prove to be the most difficult part? So that part's okay. Let's just separate this bit now. Okay. Let's apply our UV plastic. So you can see this is no good. And that is because all of this edge part is trying to stretch. So we're going to mark a seam there. And we're going to mark a seam there. And we'll clear this. And let's see how that goes. Much better. And we do have more points than I'd like, because this is entirely, so it's not entirely broken off. If we were to break this off, and then I think I'm making more work for myself here. Maybe we just accept that it's got those many pieces. Yeah, I don't think we're going to sweat it too much. Okay, so we've done the bulk of the unwrapping. We're going to do the headlights, the windows, and the wheels, these light surrounds and number plates, in the next lesson. The windows and things are very easy, as are the number plates. The wheels require a couple of little tricks, but it's worth the effort. And we're then going to pack everything into either one texture sheet if you're looking at doing some game stuff, or if you're working entirely in Blender, then we might use multiple texture sheets. And then after that we can look at doing some livery design. So it was a lot of work, I know, to get to this point, but these techniques are really useful to learn anyway, and for the kind of work that I'm doing where I want to make these into game assets, it's absolutely essential. So I hope you've learned something, hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next lesson.